Hello and welcome to Quartzlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at the Ford Cortina MKIII. Hello and welcome back to Quartzlight. If you're new to Quartzlight, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube, looking at car brochures for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're interested in cars or indeed car brochures, please consider subscribing. Anyway, back to today's episode. Like I said at the start there, the Ford Cortina MKIII. This particular brochure is a UK brochure from September 1973, so it's around about just about the time when it had its facelift. So let's have a look at that now. So here is today's brochure, like I say, September 73. It says the new Ford Cortina, which is a little bit confusing because the MKIII came out in 1970 and ran till 76. Sometimes with these brochures, when they have a bit of a facelift, they decide to call them new, although, you know, minor changes really, to be honest with you. Strange to call it new. But anyway, at the bottom here it says, we couldn't make it better to look at, so we made it better to ride in and drive. Let's just have a zoom in on that front car before we go inside. So there we go. So very much see straight away that sort of Coke bottle design that the MKIII really brought in. And this particular model, high spec, isn't it? Vinyl roof, little badge on there, E. So yeah, it is the E or executive. Quite a valuable car today if you still had one in that sort of condition. Certainly that was the car everyone wanted, the E. And indeed the MKIII brought in a lot more trim levels than the Mark II, of course, and certainly larger engine options as well. Let's look inside the brochure, because certainly we get more views of this Cortina E, which are actually a bit better than this one. So like I said and like I promised, more images. These are all of the Cortina E on this first page. Top says, looks like a bestseller again, because, you know, this is the time when the Cortina was the best-selling car in Britain, from roughly around about 1972 to 76. It was a best-selling car in Britain, and then the Mark II Escort took over after that. And I must admit, the MKIII Cortina, I think, is my favourite of all the Cortinas. I do like that Coke bottle styling. Looks very 70s, doesn't it? And certainly, I don't know when the last time I saw a Cortina E. A long time ago. Certainly, like I say, it's the Cortina everyone wanted, really. Although there were other options available, which we'll have a look at in a moment. I think we'll have another zoom in on these images because they are quite nice. So I've zoomed right into the front of this particular top of the range Cortina. And I've always liked this front, the sort of wings, how they come round, these indicators. I do think it's a handsome looking front. Bumper's unusual, isn't it? Because you get a normal straight bumper and then these little underriders, I guess, rather than an overrider. Obviously they would only come on the higher spec cars. I don't think you would have got them on sort of your L's and your base model, of course. The E also comes with these sort of like sports wheels, which are quite nice as well. And then of course that hump at the back, that sort of line, which looks very attractive, and then the E badge in there to denote this top of the range executive model. And of course we get a vinyl roof as well. And then a bit of a look at the front end of this M-Reg. Maybe worth checking out that registration plate still, see if that car's still around. It probably isn't, but I don't know if anyone wants to have a look at that. At this time, of course, we've got the facelift, so we've got these front rectangular headlights. And these would have been like on the higher spec models, so I think XL, GT, 2000E, and this is still the 2000E. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the text. So it starts by saying, for the past 2 years, the Ford Cortina has been Britain's best-selling car. What is the secret of its success? Quite simple. give the public what it wants. People want a car that is good to look at. The Cortina has already established itself as one of the great shapes of the 70s. And that's the way it will stay, with just a few touches to make it look even better. People want a car to perform well. Once more, the Cortina has a record to be proud of, and now we've managed to produce a few improvements. People want a car that is reliable, one they know they can trust. We'll trust the new Cortina to live up to the requirements just as well as its predecessors. It goes on to tell us, and we have increased the number of options you can buy. So now you can get an even wider choice of how your Cortina is fitting out to suit your personal tastes. And that's what makes it even better value for money than before. The new Ford Cortina is all set to carry on in the top spots for years to come, and indeed it did. And then we get interior shots with a little caption. But the really hot story is inside. Let's have a look at some of these interior images. So once again, this kind of like brochure is really, sticking with this top of the range model, and why not? Little E badge you can see on there. You can also see a little bit of a press, little sticker on the back window there. Then we come down the range a bit with this sort of picture here. This is going to be your Cortina XL, so extra luxury. I think XL would have stood for at the time. And you can see it's a bit more plain on the inside for sure when you start looking at the executives, but still seen as a more high spec model with those rectangular headlights, which unfortunately it's not showing here. It does have a little caption at the bottom there that I'll read to you though. It says the XL is fitted with fabric trim, which is an option available at extra cost. So strangely showing you the interior of the XL and then saying, well, you don't actually get those seats. Interestingly enough. And then next to this picture is another different model. Again, this is your super basic L. And again, it says the same thing, the L is fitted with fabric trim, which is an option available at extra cost. So more basic than it's actually showing here. And then of course the large picture is of course the nicest spec one, the E. You can see these lovely sort of wood cappings on the doors there. Looks like this particular example is an automatic, which would have been an option. And what do we get here? Is that a little bit of a clock maybe? But certainly, wood dash, and of course this facelifted one brought in this more sort of flatter dash than its predecessor. And I've kind of just zoomed in a bit just to confirm, it is a clock that you get extra on that top of the range model. Interesting little AA book, so your AA road book. I don't know if people remember those. I certainly remember my dad having one of those actually. But anyway, let's move on and look at some of the text. And the text reads fascia. As we said, not much change outside, but inside that's a real different story. The whole of the fascia has been completely restyled, and styled is the key word. There's a new look vertical face instrument panel and a roomier glove box. New eyeball type face level ventilations are now included on all models to make the well proven aeroflow ventilation system even more efficient. Controls, what else is new? Plenty of the controls have been restyled too, ergonomically. That means they're more gettable and easier to operate. A new 3-stroke fingertip control system operates flasher, lights, direction indicators, lane change signal, horn and wipers. The rest of the inside story confirms the new Ford Cortina's improvement. And of course this brochure is favouring the E model, so obviously we get some text about it. The 2000E, hottest of all. Leading the new Cortina's range in style is the 2000E. Here you'll find a standard of luxury which has, until now, only been available on much larger and more expensive cars. The seats and sidewalls are trimmed in beautiful, unique, ribbed, corded fabric and colour key deep pile cut pile carpet extends up over the door sills and cowl sides, giving a one-piece design concept throughout. What's more, there's genuine walnut wood veneer trim on the door cappings and fascia, armrests and a centre console with a clock complete the kind of luxury design which is going to hit the headlines. And then as we turn the page, this particular page is very strangely entitled "And Great News for the Man at the Wheel." Very 70s, you certainly won't be able to get away with a heading like that today. Main images now, we've kind of like moved away from the 2000E. Well, not quite, because that's a 2000E dash, but the main image is the XL now, this two-door XL. We'll certainly zoom in on these images though. So yes, zoomed in, this is the XL, like I say. I guess XL is probably like the mid-range model. We've got these rectangular headlights, these underriders, M-Reg example here. Wheel caps though, we're not getting them as fancy sports wheels, and like I say, a two-door. I don't know about you, but I always like Fords in yellow for some reason. There's something about a 70s Ford in yellow that I really like. I don't know if that's just me, but I do like those, and I do like all the chrome on these Cortinas as well. This one isn't the best picture because it's kind of like showing the car at speed, but it's nice to look at the rear. We can just about make out the Ford badging on the boot, and by the side there it says Cortina and of course XL. I do like this sort of trim treatment between the two rear lights as well. And then the dash of that top of range E with all that walnut trim, and a radio that came as standard, which was, you know, doesn't sound like much today, but was quite the thing back there. And of course this is that automatic version again. And of course, like it mentioned earlier on, this facelift brought about this sort of flatter dashboard, which you can like associate more with newer Cortinas as well. So that was, I think, a big improvement, a less fussy interior. I'm going to read all this because it gets quite wordy, but it says, you know, the new Ford Cortina is not just better to ride in, it's better to drive too. As a result of a series of improvements we have made, the suspension has been modified to make the smoother ride and road holding surer than ever. New anti-roll bars have been introduced, which decrease body motion and increased road adhesion. There are new larger front suspension bushes and softer springing that smooth the way for those who like the challenge of not so well made roads. And then it continues. I'm not going to read all that, but of course if you wanted to, you could pause that and read that yourself. We turn the page and it tells us 8 editions will sweep the country, and some images of different spec versions, which we'll certainly zoom in on now. So at the front here is, you know, once again the car you aspire to have, the E. This would be your, again, that two-door XL version, really showing off those hubcaps. And at the back though, we can just make out this would be the L version. Wasn't the lowest one actually, there was a base model as well, but this is the L, or L standing for luxury at this time, although, you know, think more basic version, showing it with these sports wheels, although that would have been an optional extra. It would have just had steel wheels as standard. And it's also showing an estate version as well. This particular estate would have been the XL version as well, in a rather attractive shade of blue. And you know, I like the estates just as much as I like the saloons actually. It's still a very nice looking design, and you can see those hubcaps on this one as well. And then we get this very unusual image. This is the XL version again from the rear, and some little kid delivering the news, although it looks like both the bicycle and the car are floating. I think they've just been superimposed on that strange background. Where this kid is biking to deliver the news, I have no idea, because it's in the middle of a field. That's a very strange image. And it tells us the great new Ford Cortina comes in 5 saloon model series. The Cortina, which would be the very base model, unfortunately not shown here. The Cortina L, the Cortina XL, The Cortina GT, again sadly it doesn't show the GT version or Grand Touring version here, and the Cortina 2000E, plus 3 versions of the stylish and load-worthy estate. But the story doesn't end there. The options available make it possible to tailor a Cortina to your individual tastes. And again, very wordy, so I'm not going to read it all, but you can certainly pause the screen if you want to read the full text. And then again, I'm not going to read it all, so you can pause the screen to read it. And it talks about the Cortina estate, you know, telling you how much space inside. Then it goes on about the 2000E again. The new Cortina 2000E offers a new experience in motoring. Great to look at, great to ride in, great to drive. Don't take our word for it, see what the papers say. So, and the E was a bit of a new model really. I think it just kind of like replaced the GXL, the Grand Extra Luxury version, I think. And then this E came along. And then we get the specification page. So I'm going to try and zoom in on those and see if we can see some specifications there. So starting off with the Cortina Saloon, and the body, what it's mentioning there is actually what all the models have. But if we move along, we can see that that base model was available as a 2 or 4 door. You've got a choice of engines on the base model of a 1300 or a 1600. Transmission is a 4-speed gearbox. A little bit of information about the brakes, the steering, the suspension, and the wheels and tyres. I'm not going to read it all, but like I always say, you can pause the screen at any time. And then this is what your exterior equipment on that very basic model was. And your equipment on that very basic model on the interior, which of course, like I say, you can pause it if you want to read through all of that. And as we move up the range, it's going to tell us what we've got above that base model. So this is the L and XL. And as it says there, the L has got the same engine choices, that 1300 or the 1600. So that 1300 only available on the base model and the L. The one below it, the XL, has just got the choice of a 1600 or a 2 litre. Only available as a 4-door by the looks of it, if you get the 2 litre though. And then if we move along, you can see that XL version has got a slightly different braking system. It's got servo assistance on the 2 litre, but other than that, everything's the same. Different tyre choice or options between the L and XL as well. And then I guess I should show you this bit first if you do want to pause it. But the top one, the L, so what additions above the base model, and then below it the XL, that's exterior equipment. And then similarly, this is your interior equipment. So if you want to pause that now, you can do. And then we get the Cortina GT and 2000E. It does sadly didn't really show the GT in this brochure, isn't it? These are both 2 litre models, although it looks like you can have the GT as a 2 or a 4-door, but the 2000E is only a 4-door car. Again, it says similar brakes as the base model, but with servo assistance. It does look like the GT has got some form of uprated suspension though. And then it's telling us both these, the GT and the Executive, have got this sports road wheel. And there is the exterior equipment for both the GT and the E. And then if we move on, this is all the equipment levels, or the interior equipment that differ for the GT, and of course that very high specs E version. Apologies the writing is so small, but if you are struggling to read any of that, of course, ask any questions if you want more information. I think particularly one feature I kind of like would point out there for the E, this unusual front seats also have reclined to bed feature. And then the estate model you can have in 3 different versions. You could have that base model, the L, or the highest model you could get this time was the XL if you wanted it as an estate. No 1300s offered for the estate. In fact, the 1600 sounds like the most common one for the Cortina estate, although you could get the 2 litre with the XL version. Again, similar sort of brake, steering, suspension. Slight difference on the XL, you did get that servo assistance on the 2 litre version. And the tyre choices for the estates, and again the XL tyre and wheel choices slightly different. So like I say, these are the 3 different equipment levels for the exterior equipment on the estate. This is kind of weird though, isn't it? If you look at the base model estate, it says as the Cortina Saloon, which is that very base model, plus a door mounted mirror on the driver's door. So that's kind of like implying there's no driver's door mirror on that base one. That's very cruel, isn't it? And then at the end here, there's all the interior equipment for that base estate, the L estate and the XL estate. And then we have all the optional equipment for all the different versions, saloons and estates. What can we point out here? I think probably really the biggest sign of the times really is this push button MWLW radio option on all the models apart from the E, which gets it as standard. So your E was the only model that got a radio as standard, although you could actually uprate it to this push button multi-band radio if you wanted to. But there are all the optional equipments if you do want to pause the screen and have a look at that in a bit more detail. And then we've got engine specifications. So if you did pick the 1300, which like I said was only available on the base model and the L, 0 to 60 18.7 seconds, maximum speed of 86 miles per hour. Kind of implying that 1300 is just a little bit small for this large car at this time. So you'd probably want to go for the 1600. 1600 0 to 16 14 seconds. Top speed of 93, which is a little bit more respectable for the time. And then right at the end here is the 2 litre. Obviously this was the engine of choice. 0 to 60 in 10.2 seconds. Maximum speed 106. So I would say that's quite a fast car for 1973. It was the engine you really wanted. And look at the fuel economy figures. Apparently not much difference between the 1600 and the 2 litre. Although it has to be pointed out this is under approximate touring fuel consumption. So a bit of a cheat, so that's probably the best figures they managed to get by driving very, very carefully on a very flat road, but there you go. It gives you some idea. And then right at the bottom right hand corner here, it kind of gives you all the details of the brochure published by Car Merchandising Department, Ford Motor Company, Brentwood, Essex, September 1973, under the reference FA2. So there we go, that is the Mark III Ford Cortina, and in fact this particular brochure is something I've been holding on to. Didn't want to do it really because I really wanted to have the L decor in there as well. The L decor was a bit of a strange model. It was available somewhere in between sort of like August 73, August 74, somewhere around there. It even had its own little decor badge on there. Wasn't a particularly high spec model, but quite a rare car today. In theory it should have been included in that brochure, but wasn't, and I've never actually seen a brochure that actually includes the L decor. If we ever do so, I certainly will do a video on it, and if you know of any particular brochure that does include that particular spec level, let me know and I'll see if I can track it down. But certainly a brochure, I'm trying to track it down, but I don't know even if there is a brochure that has that in there. Surely there must. But thank you so much for watching today. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode for Ford Friday. Please do like and subscribe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you very soon, and goodbye.